What is it about football and national pride, right? Legendary author George Orwell once said that international sport was like war minus the shooting, and that quote stands particularly true for football. I mean, think about it. It's fast, it's physical, it relies on one-on-one skirmishes and skill. And once every 4 years, the biggest showpiece for football on earth is played out, which is the World Cup. Indian fans find themselves supporting popular European or South American teams. But the question does cross their mind at least once every 4 years, is that हम World Cup में क्यों नहीं खेलते यार?
They've been called the sleeping giant of world football.
In a country of 1.2 billion people, it's a nonsense in a way.
60 years ago, India was a major football nation, the pride of Asia. But it's been the soundest sleeping of giants for a long time now.
And you do often find people saying that it's a disgrace that we're a country of 1.3 billion people and we can't produce 11 decent footballers. To those people, I say that there really isn't any direct correlation between the skill level of a country's football team and its population in 2020. The same way, there's no real easy answers to why India doesn't play in the World Cup, or rather why India has never even qualified for the World Cup. Here on The Long Throw, I try and answer this very question in 5 broad ways. Here's why India has never qualified for a FIFA World Cup. Firstly, we just don't develop a football talent up to the level required for them to achieve excellence on the global stage. Successful footballing countries all have one thing in common for children who want to take on the sport at an early age, and that is access to play the game in an organized fashion. Now take small Iceland as an example of a country that's recently found recognition on the world stage by qualifying for both Euro 2016 and the 2018 World Cup. Did you know it was only as recently as the year 2000 that its football association started building artificial all-weather mini football fields in over 110 schools? Several other full-sized football pitches were built to run weekend leagues, and the teams were coached by qualified football coaches. What was the result? Well, it resulted in a healthy, competitive structure that encouraged children to pick up the game at an early age. By comparison, in 2000, not even every Indian state had its own state-run league, and the ones that did focused on knockout competitions from the under-13 category, which was 1, far too late for organized football to begin in a child's career, and 2, too few games for any talented kid to get a fair crack at the whip. This is changing, albeit a little too slowly. The reason is decades of poor guidance off the pitch as to what to do and what not to do as professional footballers. I'm talking everything: diet, recovery, general habits. Well, the landscape is a lot better now, and the change started with the first season of the Indian Super League, which saw foreign coaches and players coming into the country and then imparting their knowledge to young Indian players. But as recently as 2013, professional players with plates loaded with rich curries and processed bread was not a very uncommon sight. So before, if a player did make it through to the top level despite the roadblocks he faced, the relationship between his performance on the pitch and the fuel that he's consumed for years cannot be underestimated. Even if, just for the sake of argument, one was to take diet out of the picture, what is the ideal lifestyle that footballers should adopt off the pitch was hardly something that was given priority, and that's where generations of footballers lost out. Thirdly, we've traditionally had systems and structures in place which prioritized short-term results over long-term development. Coaches were incentivized for short-term results, players were incentivized for short-term results, and what happens when you do that? People get desperate. And then the ugly phenomena of age fraud rears its head. Age fraud works in a way where overage players wrongly declare themselves to be younger than they actually are by producing fake documents to qualify for age group tournaments where their teams would have a better chance of winning against younger players. In turn, they would have more of a chance of getting noticed. This is rampant in all parts of India. Now take the case of the Northeast, where cases of age fudging are numerous. Those selected are from adverse backgrounds and possibly have no certificates or documents to begin with. Coaches will then selectively pick and choose those that are likely to have zero documentation and will bolster their squad with the same. Steve Darby, ex-Mohan Bagan and Mumbai FC coach, sums it up pretty nicely. Usually, the prime people who indulge in age fudging are coaches who want to win at all costs, which boosts their ego or salary or reputation, parents who maybe want their child to get a pro contract or national team representation. Age fraud also works the other way, with many players lying about their age to keep their contracts, saying they're 29 when they may be 33. Because of this, many deserving players have also missed out over the years, although the AIFF is introducing measures to ensure that age fudging is a thing of the past, and they've introduced measures like bone density tests and other tests to make sure that the correct age of the players is ascertained at every tournament. Another reason why our footballers don't develop the way they should is they just don't play enough. Take the Indian Super League for example, which allows each of the teams to play a minimum of 18 matches with 2 extra matches if they qualify for the knockout stages. The finalists get to play a maximum of 21 matches. There's other tournaments like the Super Cup and the Federation Cup, but they're not regular phenomena and they're not given too much importance either. So let's not take those into consideration. We're effectively saying a top professional in a country like India will play a maximum of 21 matches, maybe extended to 30, taking into consideration the Super Cup and the Federation Cup. That's simply not enough in the calendar year for any top level professional in any country. When your players get exposed to more competitive football per season, you develop a higher skill level. It's wrong to say that the players aren't good enough because that sounds like they'll never be good enough. That's not the case. And last but not the least, because its importance can't be emphasized enough, one word: investment. I'll just roll back to what we started with the statement that India has a population of 1.3 billion people, but we can't produce 11 decent footballers. Yeah, that's an argument given by many. And while there might not be a direct relation between the two, there is a direct relation between investment and sporting success. It's been shown over and over again over the years. In the book Soccernomics, which details the relationship between data and football, data nerds Simon Cooper and Stefan Szymanski came up with a scale using points given for success over the years in World Cups, Olympic Games and individual sports for different nations. In that scale, India ranked 15th alongside Hungary and Cuba. Now this scale wasn't limited only to football. Pretty good, one would say on the face of it, given that there are over 195 sovereign states in the world. But as soon as the rankings were rearranged on the basis of per capita success, India ranked the worst alongside China. Now, this might have not been a football specific scale, but it just goes on to show that investment matters heavily in the world of sport. A passage from the book reads, "But the main thing that the top of our rankings demonstrates is the importance of wealth. Our efficiency table for sports bears a curious resemblance to another global ranking, the United Nations Human Development Index. This measures life expectancy, literacy, education and living standards to rank the countries of the world according to their well-being. We found that a nation's well-being is highly correlated with its success in sports. Guess which country topped the UN's ranking for human development in 2015? Norway once again." Indian football has seen top-level investment from players like IMG and Reliance for the last few years, and that is highly appreciated, of course. But that investment also needs to extend to the grassroots, so that the problems we spoke about in the earlier points can be addressed in a much more efficient manner, creating a robust footballing structure in the country that truly should be among the elite in the world. Now this video of course spoke about the men's Indian football team. I will be talking about the women's team in the future videos. But if India does get its house in order across the parallels that we spoke about earlier, it might not be long before we finally see an Indian men's team in the FIFA World Cup. Here's an optimistic me signing off. See you soon.